Today, I'm going to tell you about a man nobody believed, until the truth walked through those glass doors and silenced an entire bank lobby. Here's his story. My name is Cruz, and I am 61 years old, and I still remember the cold marble floor under my worn-out shoes the day I walked into that bank holding a check for $5 million folded twice, inside an old brown envelope I had carried in my jacket pocket. Like it was made of glass, I had spent almost 40 years of my life working quietly, cleaning offices at night, driving a delivery truck during the day, and saving every single dollar I could. Because I made a promise to my late wife Maria before she passed that our daughter would never have to struggle the way we did. I walked up to the counter that morning wearing the same faded gray jacket I always wore because comfort mattered more to me than appearances. And I asked to speak to someone about depositing a large check. The woman behind the counter, her name tag read Deborah, looked at me for a long moment and then looked at the envelope in my hand with the kind of suspicion I had felt many times before in my life, the suspicion that comes when people see an old man with rough hands and tired eyes and decide before you even speak that you do not belong in a place like this. She asked me to wait and called over her manager, a sharp-featured woman named Rachel, who walked toward me with quick, clicking heels and crossed arms. Before I had even said a word, Rachel asked me what I needed, and I told her calmly that I wanted to deposit a certified check. She asked to see it, and I handed it over gently, the way you hand over something precious. She unfolded it, and her eyes moved across the numbers, and I saw her jaw tighten. She asked me where a man like me had gotten a check for $5 million, and I told her the truth, that it was payment from a small property investment I had made many years ago that had finally closed, but she did not believe me. She looked at my jacket, my old shoes, my rough hands, and something in her expression hardened into judgment. She said this looked like some kind of scam paper, and that people like me did not walk around with checks like this. She raised her voice loud enough that other customers in the lobby turned to look, and I felt my face grow hot with humiliation, but I did not argue. I simply asked her to please verify it with the bank that issued it before making any assumptions. But she was not listening anymore. She was already convinced, and in front of everyone in that lobby, she tore the check in half right there on the counter. The sound of that paper ripping felt louder than anything I had ever heard in my life. She said she was protecting the bank from fraud and that I should leave before she called security. I stood there frozen, holding the two torn pieces of paper that represented 4 decades of sacrifice, a lifetime of double shifts and skipped meals and worn-out shoes. And I felt something inside me break, quietly, like a string pulled too tight for too long. People in the lobby were staring, some with pity, some with the same suspicion Rachel had shown, and I lowered my head and turned to leave because I did not have the strength to fight in that moment. But just as I reached the glass doors, they swung open, and a tall man in a dark suit walked in fast, like he was late for something important. And the moment his eyes landed on me, his whole face changed. He stopped walking and said, "Sir," in a voice that carried across the entire lobby. And then he said it again, "So Mr. Cruz, is that you?" The room went completely silent. Rachel turned pale as the man rushed past her straight to me and shook my hand with both of his and introduced himself as the CEO of the bank. He said he recognized me instantly because 3 years ago I had quietly funded a scholarship program through a small foundation with no name attached to it, a program that had paid for his niece's college education after his brother lost his job and could not afford tuition. He said he had seen my photograph only once at a foundation dinner I did not even remember attending because I never stayed for the pictures. I only stayed long enough to sign the papers and slip out the back because attention was never what I wanted. He turned to Rachel and asked what had happened, and Deborah quietly explained that Rachel had torn up a $5 million check belonging to this man because she assumed it was fraudulent. Based on how he looked, the CEO's expression turned to something between disbelief and anger, and he asked Rachel directly if she had verified anything before destroying a customer's certified check, and she had no answer because there was no answer that could excuse what she had done. He apologized to me in front of the entire lobby and told his staff that the check would be honored in full immediately and that new documents would be issued that same day. He then told everyone standing there that the man they had just watched get humiliated had spent the last 15 years quietly funding scholarships, medical bills for strangers, and rebuilding a small community center in a neighborhood most people had given up on, and that he had done it all without ever wanting his name attached to any of it. The lobby that had been filled with judgment just minutes earlier was now filled with a heavy, uncomfortable silence, the kind that comes when people realize how wrong they were. Rachel started to apologize, but I stopped her gently because I was not angry anymore. I had spent my whole life being underestimated because of the way I dressed or the calluses on my hands, and I had learned a long time ago that dignity does not come from how people treat you. It comes from how you choose to treat them even when they do not deserve it. I told her that I hoped she would remember this day not with shame, but as a lesson to never judge the value of a person by the clothes on their back or the shoes on their feet, because sometimes the quietest people in the room have carried the heaviest burdens and given the most without ever asking for recognition. The CEO personally walked me to a private office where we spoke for almost an hour, and by the end of that conversation he asked if I would be willing to partner with the bank on a new initiative to help small community foundations like mine reach more families in need. I agreed because that had always been the point, helping people quietly and letting the impact speak louder than my name ever could. As I finally left the bank that afternoon with my new documents in hand, I looked back one more time at that lobby where I had been humiliated and then honored, all within the same hour, and I felt something Maria always used to say to me ring true in my heart, that kindness never asks to be seen. It simply waits patiently for the right moment to be understood. If this story moved you even a little bit, please take a moment to like this video, share it with someone who needs a reminder that true worth is never measured by appearances, and subscribe to Kindness True Stories so you never miss the next story that might just change the way you see the world around you.